How do you guys like this event?
Yeah.
How's the dinner? We keep coming back here to the Crown Plaza because they always do an excellent job. They always have helpful, courteous, professional people. And our interface with them is the committee that put this dinner together. So I want to ask all of the volunteers who helped made this happen to stand and please give them your applause. And last but not least, the czarina of the dinner, Steve Peters, who put this all together. Thank you, Christine. Well, we've heard some interesting speakers already, and I think I enjoyed Jennifer's talk. I enjoyed the things she's doing. I'm a firm believer that if we want to prevail again, we have to convince the electorate why our values and our solutions to the problems of the state and the country are better, not just for the state and the country, but for them as well. And sometimes that seems like a pretty daunting task. We're all volunteers here. And sometimes you don't have the feeling the media is behind you or a few other things behind you. And frankly, as I said earlier, it gets daunting. When I do that, when I feel sort of my interest is flagging or my energy, I start to think about people who have dealt with similar problems, people who have had to stand up for their country, for their state, for their families and their beliefs. And this goes back to the dawn of human history, but I always love reading the words, "To this we pledge our lives, our fortunes, and our sacred honor." And whenever I read that again, and I think, now that is truly commitment. That is people that actually risk everything to make a difference, to prevail against the opinions and the forces of the time, and make things better, put them on a better path. And I think, ladies and gentlemen, fellow Republicans, we have that charge today. Not much different when you think about it. Of course, we aren't necessarily pledging our lives, I admit. However, it is our honor, it is our purpose, it is our duty. And I think tonight our speaker, this is going to be very interesting because I imagine you remember, most of you, what things were like in the 70s. And you remember the changes with the right leadership in the UK, in the United States, and even in the church. These were people, the leaders of the time, Ronald Reagan, Margaret Thatcher, John Paul II, rather. These were people that believed in liberty, believed in the dignity of the human being, and fought against totalitarianism, socialism, and all the things that would diminish the value of the human spirit. So I think when you look back to those times, there are lessons, there are people who have prevailed. And I think they are worthy examples of what, in my opinion, I'd like to aspire to be. I would like to have that kind of influence. I would like to say someday that my efforts here and ours together have made a difference in this country and state that we can be proud of and tell our children about when we're older and have more gray hair than I do right now. Our speaker tonight is John O'Sullivan. And John is, interestingly enough, I did not know this at the time, but he is a commander of the most excellent order of the British Empire. And that is a chivalrous society set up by King George V back in 1917 to honor individuals who had dedicated themselves in service to the crown and the country. John was born in Liverpool, educated at St. Mary's College, and got his higher education at the University of London. He actually dabbled in politics and ran unsuccessfully, as it turned out, as a conservative candidate in the general election in 1970. From then, though, he has gone on to be a writer and author, a speaker, and a regular contributor to the London Daily Telegraph, Times, Independent, Toronto Star, the Globe and Mail, papers I used to read when we lived in Canada. So he's pretty much everywhere, and he's brought a conservative voice, a conservative vision to all of those endeavors. He's written a book, The President, the Pope, and the Prime Minister, which really described what it was like in those days as those people looked to turn the vision of the world into a new direction and were successful. They were responsible, in my opinion, for the collapse of communism, the Soviet Union, and the rise of what we now see as democracies across Europe. The special advisor to Margaret Thatcher in the areas of health, social security, defense procurement, and a variety of other matters. He was principal author of a 1987 Conservative Election Manifesto, somewhat like what was done in 1994 with the Republicans when they took Congress again. He has fellowships at the Hudson Institute and the Heritage Foundation. Currently resides in Decatur, Alabama, with his wife Melissa, 2 stepdaughters. So, without further ado, I just want to say I have one personal preference and interest in listening to John speak, because I want to hear exactly what a Briton sounds who lives in Decatur, Alabama. So, without further ado, I'm going to welcome our guest speaker for tonight, John O'Sullivan.
First of all, can you hear me? Yes. First of all, I have to begin by thanking you, Mr. Chairman, for that far too generous introduction. Lyndon Johnson once said in response to a similar eulogy, "My father would have enjoyed it, and my mother would have believed it." It was especially generous because it was spoken by a New Hampshire Republican to an Anglo-Irish monarchist currently living in the very heart of Dixie. Well, strictly speaking, I'm not an Anglo-Irishman. As Brendan Behan defined an Anglo-Irishman, it is a Protestant who owns a horse. I'm not that. Indeed, as the son of an Irish Catholic father and an English Catholic mother, born and brought up in Liverpool, I suppose I am the nearest equivalent in America to a Boston Irishman. Don't hold that against me, however. I emigrated. Not only geographically, my opinions today are rock-ribbed. And because they're rock-ribbed opinions, I felt myself tonight to be in extraordinarily pleasant company. I want to say a few things about what has already been said. Before I talk about speakers, let me say that although I am a loyal subject of Her Majesty the Queen, I have to say that my favorite national anthem is the American national anthem. It's an absolutely stirring anthem. And I love it in every respect except one. I don't love it as a singer because it's very hard to hit those notes. It's the most complex theme. I don't believe I've ever heard it sung better than we heard it from the young lady tonight. It was better than Beyonce, and it wasn't secondly, I want to say that I'm sorry that Charlie's left, but because he and I want to pay tribute to the work for which he and his colleague in Congress were given an award. You know, we all knock politicians from time to time, but the fact is that the work that politicians do is the donkey work of democracy. It has to be done. It's a combination of playing a wonderful part in a great game and also giving of serious public service. And I'm delighted that you have recognized this tonight with those 2 awards. I should say about Charlie, he gave me some terrific secrets from his days in the Intelligence Committee. And I want to say, you know, to all of you, he can trust me, I'm a journalist. I want to also say that I very much enjoyed Jennifer's remarks. I mean, as the chairman pointed out, I have worked for a very distinguished woman politician. I will say that in addition, it's hard to describe Margaret Thatcher. I always put it this way: she's a combination of ordinary British housewife and towering world historical figure. A combination, so to speak, of Mrs. Pooter and Bismarck.
GrokTV.